Hello and welcome back. Today we are building a beautiful semi-sealed ecosystem using this 1-gallon wine jug. I'm calling it the Community Ecosphere because we are including material from all sorts of different sources. The jug itself was given to us by a local store owner, thank you so much. And we're going to include some gravel from my mother-in-law's aquarium. Yeah. Anytime you can get material from an established tank, it will help to accelerate your cycle, it will help to improve your build. Beneficial bacteria can come in many different forms, and that's one reason I like to use gravel from established tanks. We're also going to use some marble chips in here. These marble chips will help to prevent the water from becoming too acidic over time. So with this build, one of you guys gave me an excellent suggestion. I'm sorry I can't find your name. But you suggested that when we build our next sealed ecosphere, we should do something a bit different. We should, build it, close it up, and then open it after about a week or so. Make some modifications, add some new species, things like that. And, close it back up, and then open it maybe a month later, make some modifications, add some things, feed the aquarium a little bit, close it up, and extend the amount of time that it is sealed each time. So I know that's a little complex, but I'll explain more as we go. So I've added nice aquarium water to this build from one of my off-screen fish tanks. And again, that is active live water with some beneficial bacteria. It will help to accelerate the build, to accelerate the cycle in here. It's very important. And we're just going to wipe it off nice and neat. Yeah. So this is a really nice jug here, and I'm very excited about this build. You guys maybe remember our first wine jug ecosphere, which unfortunately we lost in a tragic accident. Big thank you to the people who laughed and made fun of me. I can't help it. I care a lot about these projects. You might see just a jar of water, but to me this is a super organism, a community organism in the making, and I care a lot about them. So now we're going to add some hornwort. This is the same hornwort that I got from our buddy Tony at Phillips Fishworks as part of his bag of bugs and other orders. This hornwort is amazing. It loves my water. It loves my conditions, the way I run things with these aquariums. And this is my first time trying it in a sealed ecosystem, so I'm very excited. Now it's going to float. It wants to float, but I want it to sink, at least partially. So we're going to include a, there's a bladder snail right there. We'll just drop him into the build. Yeah. So I want this hornwort to get pinned down to the bottom just a little bit. And we may have to manipulate it a bit with our tweezers. You can see that I can't get down there and, manipulate it too much. So we're going to have to get creative. Going to have to include some hardscape or something to try to drop down onto that hornwort. I don't want to bury it completely under substrate, but I do want to get a portion of that stem pinned down to the bottom of the tank. That will give the illusion of it being like planted down there, and it should ultimately help the hornwort, or at least not hurt it too bad. Unfortunately, my tweezers can't get down there to pin a piece of this down in the bottom in the stones. So I'm going to add some more of our gravel on top to hopefully catch a piece of that hornwort. And we might try a little bit of sand as well. But yeah, our tweezers just don't work in a tank that is this deep with such a narrow opening. You'll notice that in this project I will leave quite a bit of room for air near the surface, and that's very important for a sealed ecosystem. Now, as I mentioned before, I will be opening this occasionally and closing it, sealing it back up, but we'll extend the amount of time that it is sealed each time. Each event, we'll seal it for a month, for 2 months, for 6 months, for a year. And ultimately, we should have a tank that can last for upwards of a decade, completely closed off from the outside world by the time we're done. I think that's really cool. And I'd love to film that all in one go, but I just don't think I can. So I'm still trying to get that pinned to the bottom. And we used a bit of broken shell, and we got it. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want. You'll notice that sand did cloud my water a little bit, and that's one of the reasons we stopped using the sand from our backyard. But that's okay. It will settle after a while. It's not going to hurt anything. We are going to include a little bit more gravel just to hopefully get that piece of shell permanently stuck to the bottom and get our hornwort fixed in place. So I'm very excited. This hornwort is an excellent specimen. It absolutely loves our conditions here. It loves the way that I run my aquariums, and it should do very well in this project. I'm very excited. I've never used hornwort in an ecosphere before. I have no idea really how it will react. If it fails, it will become an excellent source of food. If it grows, it will become an excellent biofilter and help to keep the project running. So either way, it's a win-win situation. We will include some backup plants in here just in case the hornwort does fail. Now, in a sealed ecosystem, plants are very important. You need them to produce oxygen. Without a plant inside, your tank will suffocate. It will happen. But think of these as models of life on Earth. You know, we have plants, we breathe out CO2, the plants essentially breathe that in, and they give us oxygen, kind of like an air filter. And together, we work together and we form this beautiful biosphere on our planet. So that's basically what we're trying to capture here on a small scale in this jug. All right, so the community ecosphere is taking shape and it's looking good. We have gravel from our mother-in-law, we have plants from Phillips Fish Works, we have water from my very own aquariums, we have sand from my very own backyard. Next, we need to wipe it down a little bit. I try to keep things clean as we are filming here. I tend to make a pretty big mess. And you guys, I am so sick of editing. I had hours of footage for this build. So yeah, I'm chopping it down to about 20 or 30 minutes. I hope that's okay with you. But the community ecosphere is taking shape. And now we have elements from Ohio and Florida. Now we need to add some more. So this is Frogbit from our good buddy Psycho Plant Lady, also known as Dina. Thank you, Dina. Your Frogbit is doing wonderful with us. And the samples that you sent originally, they came loaded with microfauna, of which I was very excited. Hopefully a few of them will make it in here as well. Frogbit is a floating plant, and it should do quite nicely in this project. Now I know what you're saying. Floating plants will cut off the oxygen to water transfer at the surface, but I think we'll be okay. Next, we're going to include some samples from our Wild Georgia collection trip that we did recently, where we found that fanwort plant, the water spangles, and some more items. This little jar here is looking amazing. I set this up off screen, but these are direct wild samples that I have cultured, and it's water spangles. It's a floating fern, and it should do quite nicely in here as well. Remember that every element, every plant, everything that we have that is underwater is essentially covered in beneficial bacteria. And I think that's a strong key to success. A lot of you guys will mention like, hey, I tried to build one of these and it didn't work. And I think that's because, you know, I'm using beneficial bacteria from so many different sources. It's not like you have one strain of bacteria that everyone has in their aquariums. That's not how it works. Bacteria evolve very quickly and they adapt to your aquarium. They evolve. They become your bacteria, you know? So when I get something from the wild or from, you know, Phillips Fish Works or from Psycho Plant Lady or from our buddy Clay, like these items all have their own unique strains of bacteria. And by putting them all together and by allowing the strongest to survive, you know, I think that improves our chances of success. Now I'm going to include some backup plants just because that hornwort may fail, and I want to make sure that we have something in here to help generate oxygen. This is Spike Rush. Spike Rush. You guys have seen it before on my channel. It's a very interesting little plant, very hard to identify when you find it in the wild. But it should do nicely in here. It may take over the aquarium, but I'm willing to bet that the hornwort will help to compete against it, and they might even keep each other in check in a way, as they both compete for resources. I believe they will both work to prevent algae from taking over the tank, but in a sealed project like this, algae is kind of a good thing. Recently, one of you guys in the comments, you mentioned, you know, maybe we should run an algae-only aquarium. Try to power an ecosphere with algae, and I think that's a cool idea. I want to try it out, but I didn't want to get too experimental with this project because I was very excited. You know, I had a strong natural inspiration for this build, so I wanted to follow that. But we will be trying that unique algae ecosphere approach in the future. So things look great, and that Spike Rush, I just kind of spread it around inside. Nothing fancy. And now we're going to add some life. We're going to add some ostracods. Yeah, seed shrimp. This is my larger ostracod species, which I cultured from some black cow manure. I know it sounds nasty, but that's where they came from. And these guys are voracious. They are unstoppable. They will breed like crazy. They will eat anything they can, other than live plants. And they're much stronger than our smaller ostracods. So this is my first time using them in a sealed project as well. Next, we're going to include some bottom feeder pellets by API. And this is just a little food source to help kickstart the project. I'm going to include quite a few of them in here, just to get everybody a little something to eat, to get some trace minerals and things to get started in our ecosphere. And you can also use fish flakes or maybe a small piece of fruit or vegetable. I just happen to have these on hand. Now we're going to give it a nice shot of some healthy green water algae. I've noticed a lot of interest in the green water algae lately in the comments. I didn't think you guys would like green water so much. My green water came to me from a wild sample years ago, and it's actually really, really easy to grow. I don't have to do anything. I can inject some of it into a jar, and it'll turn green, and then we have more. It's very simple. That green water will act as a bit of a filter, a bit of a oxygen-producing plant, as well as a food source for the ostracods, the seed shrimp. So altogether, it's beneficial. It will help us. So I want to show you the collection jar here on the right. I built this off screen. It might look a little brown, but with the right lighting, you can see it's actually very green inside. And please check out the collection trip video. I had a lot of fun, and I think that jar looks so cool. Water spangles and fanwort and all sorts of good stuff in there. I'll include a link in the description for the collection trip if you're interested. Now you're going to see me use something that you've never seen me use before. This is Crystal Pro Shrimp Minerals is what it's called. Magnesium and calcium and all sorts of good stuff. Generally, this is to help shrimp with their molting process, but I'm going to use it a little bit like a liquid fertilizer in here, and I'm willing to bet that it will also help our ostracods, since they are essentially tiny little shrimp. I'm curious to see what the effect of this will be on the aquarium, and though I expect it to generally increase growth and reproduction. So we'll just add a few drops in here. I don't usually use liquid fertilizers or anything like that, but I happen to have this for another reason, and I thought why not include a little bit in this project. And now we're going to take some samples from this other unknown aquarium that you guys may or may not remember. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Don't feel bad. But this is absolutely loaded with ostracods. I want to start with a healthy population in here. And I want to make sure that they are numerous and ready to go. You know, I want to increase their chances of survival. So we're going to include some of our ostracods from a few different sources. And we'll just inject them right into the container. I love these wine jugs, you guys. A friend of mine has offered to give us a bunch of new aquariums. I'm very excited, a bunch of new jars. And we're also going to include some water meal, some copepods, some worms, and some other things. This water may look very, very cloudy, but it is very active with life. And that's exactly what we want. Remember, this is BucketPonds. I'm not building like some gallery aquarium for everybody to ooh and ah at. I'm building a sustainable ecosystem in a jug. I don't know how else to say it, you know. Beauty comes behind, what would you say, function over form. That's not quite right. But I want it to be functional. I want it to work. I want these animals and plants to survive and thrive in this sealed ecosystem. Now, if I can make it look nice as well, that's a bonus. I'm confident that we can, but I'm not worried about a little cloudy water, a little green water. It's fine. Nothing to worry about. As long as life can survive inside, that's all I am concerned about. I love injecting stuff into this wine jug. I can't help it. Making heavy use of our injector on this video. And we have another sample here. These are my wild type tubifex worms. That's what I call them. They're species unknown. We collected them from the wild a few years ago. They've been with us ever since. Very easy to raise, easy to reproduce. They do a great job of eating anything they can, any wilted plants, any debris, loose food, anything like that. Of course, there are a few ostracods in here as well. And I know you guys occasionally spot copepods in my tanks. Generally, I don't worry about it too much. Um, I'm not too excited to see them anymore. They're just part of our ecosystem. They're part of the BucketPonds biosphere. So when I see them in here, it's like, okay, guy, that's good. Copepods are cool, but I don't specifically go out of my way to collect them or anything. And that's true with many of our life forms here. I've seen so many different species that we've collected. Some did not work out, some did. And those that do work for my projects, they stay with us. I think that's really cool. So the tank is looking pretty good, and I'm pretty excited. Now we need to add a few more bladder snails. And for this, we are using our tiny shovels. I love these little shovels. You could get a similar type of tool with just a spoon. I just like the little shovels. But these are coming from the 5-gallon guppy paradise, which I know a lot of you guys are skeptical about the way I do things. You mocked me, you said the guppies didn't have enough water, whatever. But that's fine. I'm appreciative of any skepticism. It helps us do better. But the 5-gallon guppy tank is thriving. I have to get in here and pull more hornwort out. Our guppies are alive. Everything looks good. And I'm happy to include a few bits in this project. That's also where I took the hornwort from. We do have to harvest hornwort from that 5-gallon pretty much weekly at this point, which I think is so cool. But we're going to add some more API bottom feeder pellets. And again, just a few this time, just to help feed everybody. And I should mention this is day 2 of the build. Everything looks great though. When you're building these sealed ecosystems, a lot of people, they will go out and they'll get a jar of water from a pond or something, put the lid on it, and that's fine. But I have a different method, And now we're going to include some material from pool pond number 1. This is essentially leaves, some mud, some things from the bottom. We're going to make it into little tacos and stick it down in there. This is an idea that I got from Tony at Phillips Fish Works. Including some leaves and things will help to feed our plants, feed our pets, essentially. But, all of our detritivores, all of our little omnivores, they will chew this stuff up and turn it into a very useful fertilizer for the plants, essentially poo, basically. But a lot of people, when they build an ecosphere, they'll go out, they'll get a jar of water from a pond or something. They'll close it up and like, oh, ecosphere, bah. That's cool. You can get an idea of what's going on in that body of water. But I approach these things very differently. I approach them in a methodical way. I am intentionally building an ecosystem that is meant to live in a sealed jar. And I think that's far more effective. That's what I like to do. I've made the normal ecospheres a few times, but I think this is where the real success can be found. We're going to add a few more bladder snails, just hand collected from the large guppy tank that you guys have seen occasionally on the channel. And guys, I put a lot of work into these videos. We're also going to include a little bit of material from my filter, from my pre-filter in that very same tank. There's some mulm there, some duckweed, some bladder snail eggs, all sorts of good stuff. I just scraped it off the pre-filter. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, I use a pond pre-filter rigged up to my hang-on back filters for my fish tanks. I'll show you one day. We'll look at it. But I put a lot of work into these tanks, and sometimes it really hurts me when we don't get many views. But then some of the videos blow up, and you guys really enjoy them, and that just perks me right back up, So I'm never going to stop making these projects. I'm never going to go away. I'm just happy for those of you that like to, join me and hang out. But the tank looks pretty good. It's not perfect. It's not pretty, exactly. But it has its own charm, and it will develop into a very nice ecosystem. So we're getting ready to close it up. Let's come back. Day 3. Yeah. So I added a little backlighting just so we could see what's going on in here. The green water has taken very nicely to this project. The detritus that we added from pool pond number 1 has settled to the bottom. And I'm wearing a little bit of my BucketPonds swag. It's a BucketPonds bracelet. Yeah, there's only 2 of them in the world right now, but I hope to have a few more made soon. I have not forgotten about the t-shirt designs, you guys. I actually have the t-shirts done, the designs anyway. I'm just waiting for a friend of mine to either produce the shirts or I'll have to order them online. I'd rather get my friend to make them as I want to send some business their way. But yeah, we have to do what we have to do. I've given them a lot of time to get their stuff back together, so If nothing else, we'll just order them through Amazon or something, and I'll have some shirts ready to go. So you may notice a occasional floating shell in here, and that's from the substrate that we used. If you run a tank with hundreds of snails inside, you will eventually have a few shells from snails that have died or been eaten by a crayfish or something. But don't let that fool you. That snail did not die in this tank. It was just added as an empty shell. It's essentially a stone at this point. It'll add a little calcium to the project. But our bladder snails are numerous. They are very healthy. We did include a couple egg sacs in here from the pond pre-filter. And yeah, they look good. They're already starting to breed, doing their stuff that they do. And we're ready to seal up the project, you guys. I'm so excited. So this is going to be a semi-weekly video series. I'm going to open this next week, do a little work, feed them a little bit. This will, of course, be on camera. And then I'll close it back up, and we'll open it again in a month or so. And we'll do the same, a little maintenance, a little work. We may add a few new species, and we'll close it back up. I'm going to extend the amount of time that it is sealed with each event. And, you know, we're going to go for like a week, a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year, something like that. We'll go in sequence. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to include a couple labels on this one, namely the name of the aquarium, the Community Ecosphere, along with the date that it was originally started. And we'll include a second label just with a little bit of information about the plants, just in case I forget, you know. After 2 or 3 years, it's hard to remember every little jar that you've built. And I have some ecospheres right now on the shelf that are somewhat forgotten. So maybe we'll look at them again in the future. But I am so excited, you guys. This project looks great. I'm very curious to see what develops. We may see some different life forms from some of the material that we included in here, especially from those pond samples from pool pond number 1, the wild samples, and the other samples as well. We have plants from Ohio, from Florida, from Georgia. We have substrate from my family member's aquarium. We have bladder snails from the Bladder Snail Breeding Project. You know, they've come from Texas and Puerto Rico and all sorts of crazy places, and all together into one family line. I think it's so cool. You know, the more you do this stuff, this hobby, it kind of builds upon itself, you know. And over time, you can take some samples from a jar you built and use it to build something else. I think that's really, really cool. So you guys, I am absolutely sick of editing. I had so many hours of footage for this build. You might not think it, but yeah. So I'm just going to use the end of the previous video. There's a look at our little tadpole buddy. And I'm trying to stick to my plan. I'm building this tank next. It's going to be a nice 5-gallon water dispenser aquarium, very similar to the previous one we built, but this time I'm going to include shrimp and quite a bit of green water alongside our hornwort. I'm very excited. That should be my next upload. Big thank you to our Patreon crew, Clay Wise, Jay, Swan C, Jeff Kiesner, Ashley Danielle, Wheelbite, Jess, and Valerie Lyons. You can join Patreon for free. You don't have to pay anything. You can donate any amount if you'd like to. No pressure either way. And big thank you to our YouTube members who do a lot to keep me inspired, to keep me going. Clay Wise, Wheelbite, thank you Wheelbite, Ryan Boscow, Phillips Fishworks, Twinkles Saves the World, and Seth Shapiro. Seth, buddy, I might have mentioned it before, but I like your video about your aquariums. Please show more of your tanks and stuff, man. And for you guys out there with your newer channels, you know, if you're doing it just for fun, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what I do. And I'm just so excited to see your projects. Anyway, guys, I hope you have a great day. I'll have another video up soon. This is BucketPonds with our Community Ecosphere early build setup.